What's going on, YouTube? Today we are going to have a look at the Subaru's rear brakes. It's over here, and so we'll bring that into the laneway. So as I've explained in my last video, I replaced the timing belt, water pump, and did all that job, and then we did the brakes and replaced the starter. So when I drove off with the car, I had to do the braking procedure correctly, and I noticed there was some noise coming from the rear wheel. I suspect it might just be paint that was flaking off of the dust shield in the rear wheel. So in any event, I will set this up over here in the laneway, take the wheel apart, and then we'll release the parking brake, or at least adjust it so that we can take the disc off fairly easily. So I'll set this down and set myself up. Alright, so we've got the wheel off. I'm hoping the sound's okay. It's kind of windy today. The car's up on jack stands, and I've got wheel chucks at the front. I've only parked it in gear because I had to release the parking brake. So it's been rather rainy and humid, so there's a bit of rust already that's built up on the discs here. So the job will simply be to remove the two bolts for the caliper here, and at the back I think I'll have to get a better vantage point when I'm underneath. We'll have to remove the bolts that hold this bracket into place to the spindle. Those are a bit trickier to get to, but they actually designed the vehicle to make it somewhat easy. There's holes into or access holes, I should call them, into the parts that are kind of in the way behind here to get to those nuts. So I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. But this should be all of, I don't know, 5 minutes or so to take apart. Okay, so we are underneath the car now. I hope you can see this. There is a bolt inside that round access port there. I need to get to that one, and there's another one. View here up top there. So I will remove both of those so we can remove the bracket, and then I will release the parking brake adjuster, which is a little rubber cap, which I think is only seen once we remove that that bracket. Alright, so I got the bracket off through this access hole. I got the bottom bolt here, and by the way, those bolts at the bottom and the top of the brackets are the same size as the bolts for the caliper. They're both or they're all 14 mil rather. And if you look under here, there's a rubber cap here. You'll have to remove the rubber cap to have access to the adjuster, and then with a flathead screwdriver you can spin that adjuster so that you can remove some of the tension on the parking brake assembly inside the disc. And because if you don't, the disc is really hard to take off, since the pads kind of always, or I should say the shoes always rub on the inside of the disc, and they can get pretty tight on there. So I will adjust it and remove the disc. Okay, so we're back at the front of the wheel. I've managed to take off the disc without actually adjusting the parking brake at all. Which tells me that when we reassembled it, reassembled this wheel, we didn't adjust the parking brake tight enough, because the disc came right off without any help. I just literally grabbed onto it and it came up. So my problem here was on the bracket. This hardware here, this clip, was turned in like this, so it would have been rubbing on the disc itself. So I've pushed it back into place. I'll make sure I may have to bend it back a little bit, because the discs that I bought, or pads and discs that I bought, didn't come with these little plates. I had to clean up the ones that were already on the car. So in doing the job, we must have been reckless and bent it a little bit. So I'll readjust that and then reassemble and spin the wheel, which is the reason why I've got both sides of the rear end of the car up on jack stands, so that I can turn the wheel, and because I don't want to take it apart, put it back together, put it down, and then realize that the noise is still there. So I will reassemble this and put the wheel back on, and we'll see what we've got. Okay, so I've had everything back together, spin the wheel, and I'm still getting the same noise. So it wasn't those little metal plates that are right here that we're actually rubbing. So I went by process of elimination. I removed the caliper and then turned the wheel again. I could still hear it. I removed the pads, turned the wheel from the hub really, and I was still getting the noise. I removed the bracket that was bolted to the spindle, turned the wheel, still getting the noise, which means it was inside. So here's what I'm thinking. It might be this edge around here that's built up a bit of rust, or it might be here, but I think that's kind of far from the disc. But either way, I can see that there's some rust building up back here as well. So I'm going to put the Dremel to it. I'll clean it up and then put the disc back on and see if I'm still getting noise or if I've solved the problem. Okay, so we've reassembled everything, checked the wheel. There was no noise that I could hear. Sorry, I didn't cover the adjuster. I think I'm going to end up doing the shoes at one point for the parking brake, so I may cover it in that video. So yeah, took it up for a spin. Everything is good. I've got no more noise. The hood is open right now, just because I could smell coolant after I'd had reassembled everything after the timing belt job. That clamp down there on that hose was incorrectly installed, so it leaked a little bit, and so after my spin I could smell a bit of coolant, and so I thought I'd put a piece of cardboard underneath the car, see if it's actually leaking or if it's just residue that was on the exhaust, because that's the exhaust just underneath there. But otherwise that's it, and so we'll see you on the next project.